They thought it was dead, barren, a lifeless rock drifting silently through the cosmos. But beneath its surface lay secrets that would change everything we know about existence. What happened to the civilization that once thrived here? Why did they vanish without a trace? And what horrors still linger in the shadows of their forgotten world? Join us as we unravel the mystery of Dead Planet's Secret, the Vanishing Civilization Dash. Hit subscribe now because the truth is out there, and it's waiting for you. The journey began long before anyone stepped foot on the planet's surface. It started with whispers, a series of anomalies detected by deep space telescopes orbiting Earth's moon. At first, scientists dismissed them as glitches or natural phenomena, but curiosity gnawed at them like an insatiable hunger. The readings suggested something impossible, traces of artificial structures buried beneath layers of dust on what had always been considered a barren wasteland. For decades, this distant world, catalogued only as PX 237, had been written off as devoid of any significance. Yet now, evidence pointed to the unthinkable, signs of intelligent life. Preparations were meticulous, bordering on obsessive. The crew consisted of experts from every conceivable field: astrophysicists, archaeologists, linguists, biologists, engineers, all united by one goal: to uncover the truth behind these enigmatic signals. Months turned into years as simulations, training exercises, and debates consumed their lives. Every detail mattered. Even the smallest oversight could mean disaster when venturing so far from home. Finally, after countless sleepless nights and endless preparations, the day arrived. The ship, christened EOS Dash, launched from Earth amid cheers and tears, carrying humanity's hopes and fears into the unknown. As the vessel pierced through the void of space, reality began to blur. Time lost meaning aboard the cramped quarters of the spacecraft. Days bled into weeks, then months. The crew floated between routines of maintenance checks, data analysis, and brief moments of camaraderie. Outside the reinforced windows, stars stretched endlessly, indifferent to their mission. Each member wrestled with their own thoughts, haunted by questions they couldn't answer. Was this expedition folly? Or would they find something monumental enough to justify the risks? When PX 237 finally loomed large in their viewport, a collective silence fell over the crew. Its surface was bleak, scarred by eons of meteor impacts and wind erosion. Dust storms swirled across vast plains, obscuring details but hinting at shapes beneath. Mountains rose jaggedly against the horizon, their peaks sharp and unyielding. There was no sign of water, no vegetation, nothing that suggested life had ever taken root here. Yet somewhere within this desolation lay answers, or perhaps more mysteries. Landing procedures commenced with precision honed through years of practice. Thrusters flared as the ship descended toward coordinates pinpointed by orbital scans. The ground trembled slightly under the weight of the landing gear, kicking up clouds of fine gray particles. When the dust settled, the crew donned their suits and prepared to step onto alien soil. As the airlock hissed open, anticipation crackled like static electricity. Beyond the threshold lay not just another planet, but potentially the remnants of a civilization that defied all understanding. No one spoke as they exited the ship, their boots crunching softly against the powdery terrain. Above them, two suns hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows across the landscape. This was it, the beginning of their odyssey. The initial sweep revealed little beyond stark emptiness. Instruments hummed softly as they scanned the surroundings, searching for anything anomalous. Dust clung to every surface, masking whatever might lie beneath. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of sediment covering the ground. Despite the apparent lack of activity, there was an unsettling quality to the environment. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally, and faint vibrations traveled through the soles of their boots, though none could identify their source. It wasn't until the second hour of exploration that the first clue emerged. One of the archaeologists paused mid-step, her visor lighting up with excitement as her scanner detected unusual density variations below the surface. Carefully, she signaled the others to gather around while deploying a portable excavation tool. Layers of dust gave way to reveal smooth stone slabs arranged in deliberate patterns. These weren't random formations caused by geological processes. They bore unmistakable signs of craftsmanship. Symbols etched into the material glowed faintly under the artificial light of their headlamps, pulsating rhythmically as if alive. Speculation ran rampant among the crew. Could this be evidence of architecture, religious monuments, defensive structures? Without context, it was impossible to say. What intrigued them most, however, was the material itself. Preliminary tests indicated it wasn't native to the planet. It appeared to have been imported, suggesting advanced technology capable of interplanetary transport. Whoever created this had possessed knowledge far surpassing anything humanity currently understood. Further investigation uncovered additional fragments scattered across the area. Walls partially collapsed, statues eroded nearly beyond recognition, and pathways leading deeper into the expanse. They followed these trails cautiously, each step taking them closer to the heart of whatever civilization had once called this place home. Along the way, they documented everything meticulously, capturing images, collecting samples, and mapping the terrain. Their equipment buzzed with activity, feeding streams of data back to the ship for later analysis. Despite their growing fascination, unease crept into their minds. Something felt wrong. The air inside their suits grew heavier with each passing moment, though oxygen levels remained stable. Conversations became clipped, almost strained, as if speaking aloud disrupted some fragile balance. Even the normally stoic engineer hesitated before touching certain surfaces, his gloved hands hovering inches above objects as though expecting them to react violently. Whatever force had driven this society to extinction left echoes behind, whispering warnings to those who dared disturb its resting place. By sunset, or rather, the dimming of the twin suns, the team returned to Eos, laden with discoveries yet burdened by unanswered questions. Inside the ship, discussions erupted as they reviewed their findings. Hypotheses flew wildly, ranging from environmental collapse to extraterrestrial invasion. But one idea kept resurfacing. Perhaps the inhabitants hadn't simply died, they had disappeared, vanished entirely, leaving behind only cryptic clues embedded in stone and shadow. If true, the implications were staggering. Not only had they found proof of intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, but also evidence of a fate too horrifying to comprehend. Tomorrow, they resolved, they would delve further into the ruins. Perhaps then, they could piece together the story of this vanished people and discover why their legacy remained shrouded in darkness. The second day of exploration began with a sense of urgency that hadn't been present before. The team had tasted the thrill of discovery, but it was laced with unease. The symbols etched into the stone slabs haunted their thoughts, patterns too intricate to be natural, yet alien in design. They couldn't decipher them, not yet, but they recognized the weight of what they might mean. This wasn't just a lost city, it was a message, a warning, perhaps, or a plea for remembrance. Whatever it was, it demanded answers. As they ventured farther from Eos Dash, the terrain shifted subtly. The flat plains gave way to rolling hills dotted with unnatural formations. Some looked like collapsed towers, others resembled monolithic statues toppled by time. The air inside their suits felt heavier still, though no external factors could explain the sensation. It was as if the very atmosphere resisted their intrusion, pushing back against their presence. Yet, they pressed on, driven by the insatiable curiosity that had brought them here. One of the biologists noticed something peculiar, a cluster of crystalline structures jutting out from the ground near the base of a crumbling wall. At first glance, they appeared geological, but closer inspection revealed faint traces of organic material embedded within. Samples were carefully extracted and sealed for later analysis. Could these crystals have been part of some ancient biological process? Or were they remnants of technology so advanced it blurred the line between life and machine? The implications sent shivers down their spines. Deeper into the ruins, they encountered their first intact structure. It stood alone amidst the decay, its surface polished smooth despite centuries or millennia of neglect. The entrance yawned open like a mouth frozen mid-scream, inviting them inside. Hesitation rippled through the group. None spoke aloud, but each felt the same unspoken fear. What if stepping inside meant never coming out again? Still, they couldn't turn back now. Gathering their courage, they activated their headlamps and stepped into the darkness. The interior defied logic. Walls curved inward impossibly, creating spaces that seemed larger than the building's exterior suggested. Strange glyphs glowed softly along the corridors, casting an otherworldly light that danced across their visors. Every step echoed unnaturally loud, as though the silence itself resisted being broken. In the center of the chamber, they found another artifact, a pedestal carved from the same imported stone as the ruins outside. Upon it rested a sphere, perfectly round and pulsating with a soft, golden hue. They approached cautiously, instruments at the ready. The sphere emitted no heat, no radiation, nothing measurable beyond its eerie glow. When one of the engineers extended a gloved hand toward it, the light flared suddenly, bathing the room in brilliance. For a brief moment, images flickered in their minds, not seen through their eyes, but felt directly within their consciousness. Scenes of bustling cities, towering spires reaching toward alien skies, beings unlike anything they'd imagined moving among them. Then, abruptly, the visions dissolved into chaos, fire, destruction, emptiness. The sphere dimmed, returning to its previous state as if nothing had happened. Back aboard EOS Dash, they replayed the event endlessly, searching for meaning. Was this a memory? A recording? A hallucination induced by stress and exhaustion? No consensus emerged, only more questions. What had caused the downfall of this civilization? And why did the artifact react to them specifically? Each member of the crew wrestled with their own interpretation, haunted by the fragments of insight they'd glimpsed. Sleep eluded them that night, replaced instead by restless contemplation of what lay ahead and what might lie beneath. Morning brought no clarity, only determination. Armed with fresh resolve, the team returned to the ruins, focusing their efforts on mapping the labyrinthine structure. Its layout defied conventional architecture, bending and twisting in ways that challenged spatial reasoning. Corridors looped back on themselves, staircases spiraled upward only to lead downward, and doorways opened into rooms that shouldn't exist based on the building's dimensions. It was as though the creators had designed it to disorient intruders, or perhaps even trap them. Despite the confusion, they made progress. Using drones equipped with advanced sensors, they identified patterns in the design. Certain areas repeated motifs found elsewhere, suggesting a deliberate organization. Symbols matching those on the glowing sphere appeared frequently, often accompanied by additional markings that hinted at purpose. One particularly intriguing sequence seemed to depict a timeline, a series of events leading up to some catastrophic conclusion. If decoded, it might reveal the story of the civilization's demise. Hours turned into days as they delved deeper. Supplies dwindled, forcing rationing protocols. Tempers frayed under the strain of constant vigilance. Every shadow seemed to move when glanced at indirectly, every sound carried an undertone of menace. Even routine tasks became fraught with tension. Yet, none suggested abandoning the mission. The allure of uncovering the truth outweighed their growing discomfort. Their breakthrough came unexpectedly. While examining a section of wall thought to be solid, one of the archaeologists noticed faint vibrations emanating from behind it. After careful probing, they discovered a hidden compartment containing scrolls made from an unknown material. Unlike the brittle remnants of Earth-based civilizations, these artifacts remained supple and intact. Inscriptions covered their surfaces, dense with information waiting to be unraveled. Transporting the scrolls back to EOS ignited a flurry of activity. Linguists pored over the text, attempting to discern syntax and meaning. Patterns began to emerge, repetitive phrases, recurring symbols, and what appeared to be numerical sequences. Slowly, painstakingly, they pieced together fragments of the language. The narrative took shape, a tale of prosperity followed by hubris, innovation overshadowed by recklessness. The civilization had reached heights undreamed of, harnessing powers beyond comprehension. But in doing so, they had unleashed forces they couldn't control. What exactly those forces were remained unclear. References to the void and the consuming dark recurred throughout the text, always accompanied by warnings. Phrases like "beware the silence" and "it watches" sent chills through the translators. By the time they reached the final passages, detailing the exodus or disappearance of the people, dread settled heavily over the crew. Something had hunted them, consumed them, erased them entirely. And now, it seemed, it knew they were here. The realization dawned gradually, creeping into their awareness like a cold wind seeping through cracks in armor. At first, it was subtle, the way equipment malfunctioned without explanation, how shadows moved faster than they should, how voices whispered faintly in frequencies just beyond human hearing. Then came the dreams. Vivid, visceral nightmares plagued each member of the crew, filled with images of towering figures cloaked in darkness, their forms shifting and writhing like smoke given life. Eyes glowed where none should exist, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Always, there was the feeling of being watched, pursued, cornered. Attempts to dismiss these phenomena as stress-induced hallucinations faltered under mounting evidence. Instruments recorded spikes in electromagnetic activity with no discernible source. Drones sent to scout ahead returned damaged, their cameras capturing fleeting glimpses of shapes darting just out of frame. Communication channels buzzed with interference, occasionally resolving into distorted voices speaking in languages none of them understood. Fear rooted itself deeply within the team, gnawing at their resolve with sharp teeth. Yet, they couldn't leave a not yet. Not until they uncovered the full scope of what they'd found. Determination hardened into obsession. Each new discovery fueled their need to understand, even as the risks grew exponentially. They doubled security measures, posting guards around the clock and fortifying EOS against potential threats. Inside the ruins, they worked quickly, documenting everything they could while avoiding areas deemed too dangerous. Time was running out. They felt it in their bones. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, the biologist made a startling observation. The crystalline structures they collected earlier weren't inert after all. Under specific wavelengths of light, they emitted faint pulses, synchronized with the glowing sphere's rhythm. Cross-referencing data led to a shocking conclusion. The crystals acted as conduits, amplifying whatever energy the sphere produced. More alarmingly, the frequency matched readings detected during equipment failures and drone malfunctions. A hypothesis formed, terrifying in its simplicity. The artifacts weren't relics, they were components of a system still partially active. Whatever force had driven the civilization to extinction hadn't disappeared. It lingered, dormant but aware. Their presence had awakened it, drawing its attention like moths to flame. Panic threatened to overwhelm them, but discipline held firm. If they acted swiftly, methodically, they might disable the system before it fully reactivated. Failure meant becoming part of the planet's legacy, swallowed whole by the same entity that had claimed its original inhabitants. The decision to disable the system was unanimous, yet fraught with uncertainty. None of them truly understood what they were dealing with, only that it was ancient, powerful, and potentially malevolent. The crystalline structures and the glowing sphere formed a network, their energy pulses growing stronger with each passing hour. If left unchecked, the system would reach critical activation. What that meant, no one dared speculate, but the visions from the sphere lingered in their minds. Fire, chaos, emptiness. They couldn't risk allowing whatever force lay dormant to awaken fully. Plans were drawn up hastily, combining engineering expertise with archaeological insights. The team identified key nodes within the ruins where the crystals seemed most concentrated. Disabling these points would theoretically disrupt the flow of energy, severing the connection between the artifacts and the sphere. However, the process carried inherent dangers. Touching the crystals directly caused immediate feedback, a sharp, searing pain that radiated through gloves and suits alike. Prolonged exposure led to disorientation, hallucinations, and even fainting spells. It was as if the system resisted tampering, punishing those who interfered. Despite the risks, they pressed forward. Dividing into pairs, they moved through the ruins, targeting the nodes one by one. Each step required precision and caution. Mistakes could trigger unforeseen consequences. The atmosphere grew heavier with every node disabled, as though the planet itself recoiled in anger. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, swallowing light whole. Whispers echoed through empty corridors, indistinct but insistent, urging them to stop. Yet, they persisted, driven by desperation and duty. It wasn't until they reached the final node that resistance escalated dramatically. Located deep within the heart of the structure, this crystal pulsed erratically, its glow flickering like a dying star. As one pair approached, the ground trembled violently, sending debris cascading from the ceiling. A low hum reverberated through the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. Instruments malfunctioned en masse, readings spiking wildly before flatlining entirely. Panic surged, but there was no turning back now. With trembling hands, they activated the device designed to neutralize the crystal's energy. The reaction was instantaneous. A blinding flash erupted, engulfing the room in pure white light. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, darkness descended, not the comforting kind, but an absolute void that swallowed sound, sight, and thought. When consciousness returned, the crew found themselves sprawled across the floor, their equipment damaged beyond repair. The crystal lay shattered at their feet, its fragments inert and lifeless. Silence reigned, profound and oppressive. But something felt off. The oppressive weight that had plagued them since their arrival was gone, replaced by an eerie calm. Too calm. As they regrouped and staggered back toward Eos Dash, unease settled over them once more. Had they truly succeeded? Or had they merely delayed the inevitable? Back aboard Eos Dash, the sense of relief was short-lived. Initial scans of the surrounding area revealed no immediate threats, but anomalies persisted. Equipment readings fluctuated unpredictably, and faint vibrations continued to emanate from beneath the planet's surface. The crew debated whether to leave immediately or conduct further analysis, torn between prudence and curiosity. Ultimately, the decision was made to stay, for now. Their mission wasn't complete until they understood the full implications of what they'd uncovered. In the days that followed, efforts shifted toward piecing together the civilization's story. Fragments of the scrolls translated earlier hinted at rituals performed to appease the Watchers, entities described as both creators and destroyers. These beings supposedly existed outside conventional dimensions, feeding on energy and emotion. Over time, the civilization had grown arrogant, believing they could harness the Watchers' power for their own gain. Instead, they unleashed catastrophe, drawing the entity's attention and sealing their doom. This revelation sent shockwaves through the team. If the Watchers were real and evidence suggested they were, then disabling the system might not have been enough. Perhaps the act of interference had already marked them. Paranoia spread like wildfire. Every shadow became suspect, every noise a potential threat. Even mundane tasks took on sinister undertones. Sleep eluded them, dreams plagued by visions of amorphous shapes closing in, voices whispering their names in languages long dead. Amidst the growing tension, one discovery offered a glimmer of hope. Buried deep within the ruins, they uncovered a chamber unlike any other. Its walls shimmered with iridescent hues, reflecting light in impossible ways. At its center stood a pedestal similar to the one holding the glowing sphere, but this artifact was different. Rather than pulsating with golden light, it emitted a cool, steady blue glow. Inscriptions etched into the pedestal suggested it served as a countermeasure, a failsafe created by the civilization in their final days. Hope ignited anew. If this artifact could counteract the Watchers' influence, then perhaps salvation remained within reach. Yet, activating it posed its own risks. Unlike the sphere, which responded predictably, if destructively, the blue artifact's purpose remained unclear. Was it a weapon? A shield? Or something else entirely? Without proper understanding, using it could prove catastrophic. Still, faced with dwindling options, they resolved to try. Preparations for activating the blue artifact were meticulous, bordering on obsessive. Every variable was accounted for, or so they hoped. The team donned reinforced suits equipped with additional shielding, though none knew whether such measures would suffice against forces operating on a dimensional level. Instruments were recalibrated to monitor changes in energy patterns, though past experiences suggested reliability was far from guaranteed. Despite their best efforts, uncertainty hung heavy in the air, mingling with the ever-present dread. When the moment came, silence fell over Eos Dash. All eyes were fixed on the monitors displaying live feeds from the artifact chamber. A single engineer stepped forward, her gloved hand hovering above the pedestal. With a deep breath, she initiated the sequence. The artifact responded immediately, its glow intensifying until it illuminated the entire chamber. Waves of energy rippled outward, distorting reality itself. Walls bent and twisted, colors bled into one another, and gravity seemed to lose all meaning. For several agonizing seconds, chaos reigned supreme. Then, abruptly, everything stopped. The artifact dimmed, returning to its original state. The crew held their collective breath, waiting for some sign of success or failure. Moments passed, then minutes. No watchers emerged from the shadows. No whispers echoed through the halls. Slowly, cautiously, they began to believe they might have succeeded. Scans of the surrounding area showed a significant reduction in anomalous activity. The oppressive weight that had plagued them since their arrival lifted entirely, leaving behind only the sterile emptiness of a dead planet. Yet, victory felt hollow. They had survived, yes, but at what cost? The civilization they'd sought to understand was gone, erased by hubris and fear. Their artifacts remained, silent witnesses to a tragedy repeated countless times across the cosmos. And the Watchers, were they truly banished, or merely retreating to await another opportunity? Questions lingered, unanswered and unanswerable. With the immediate threat neutralized, thoughts turned to departure. Supplies were running critically low, and morale hovered near collapse. Lingering doubts gnawed at their resolve, whispering that staying longer invited disaster. Yet, leaving felt like abandoning unfinished business. So much remained unknown, so many secrets buried beneath layers of dust and time. Could they justify walking away without answers? Ultimately, practicality won out. Remaining on PX, 237 risked not only their lives, but also the integrity of their findings. Data collected thus far needed to be analyzed, theories tested, conclusions drawn. Only then could humanity begin to grasp the magnitude of what they'd uncovered. Reluctantly, preparations commenced for the journey home. As Eos ascended into orbit, the crew cast one last glance at the desolate landscape below. Shadows stretched long across the plains, obscuring details but hinting at shapes beneath. Mountains loomed jaggedly against the horizon, their peaks sharp and unyielding. It was a place of stark beauty and profound sorrow, a testament to ambition unchecked and consequences unforeseen. Somewhere within its depths lay the remnants of a civilization that had dared too much and paid the ultimate price. Once safely en route, discussions erupted about what to do next. Some advocated for quarantine protocols upon return, fearing contamination by forces unseen. Others argued for public disclosure, believing humanity deserved to know the truth. Debates raged late into the night, fueled by exhaustion and adrenaline. One thing, however, remained certain: their lives, and perhaps the fate of Earth itself, would never be the same. The journey back to Earth was anything but routine. Though the immediate threat of PX 237 had been neutralized, or so they hoped, the psychological toll lingered. Each member of the crew wrestled with their own demons, haunted by what they'd seen and experienced. The visions from the glowing sphere replayed in their minds like a broken record, bustling cities reduced to ash, shadowy figures consuming everything in their path, and the deafening silence that followed. Sleep became an elusive luxury, replaced by restless nights filled with fragmented dreams and half-formed fears. Conversations aboard Eos grew sparse, punctuated by long stretches of silence. When words were exchanged, they often revolved around unanswered questions. What exactly were the Watchers? Were they truly banished, or merely waiting? And what role did humanity play in this cosmic drama? These thoughts weighed heavily on everyone, casting a pall over the ship's once vibrant camaraderie. Even mundane tasks, checking systems, reviewing data logs, preparing meals, felt mechanical, devoid of purpose beyond survival. Yet, amidst the gloom, a spark of resolve remained. They had uncovered something monumental, something that challenged humanity's understanding of existence itself. This wasn't just about one dead planet or its vanished civilization. It was about the broader implications for life across the universe. If such advanced beings could rise and fall so catastrophically, what hope did humanity have against similar forces? The question gnawed at them, driving home the fragility of progress and the hubris that often accompanied it. As they approached Earth's orbit, reality began to set in. Their mission wouldn't end upon landing. If anything, it would intensify. Governments, scientists, ethicists, and the general public would demand answers, and not all would be satisfied with the truth. Some might dismiss their findings as fiction, Others might exploit them for personal gain. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on their shoulders, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. Preparations for reentry included rehearsing statements, compiling reports, and ensuring all collected data was secure. But beneath these practicalities lay a deeper concern. How much should they reveal? Full disclosure risked panic and misunderstanding, while withholding information invited accusations of secrecy and betrayal. Striking a balance seemed impossible, yet necessary. As the blue-green orb of Earth loomed larger in their viewport, they braced themselves for the challenges ahead. Touchdown on Earth brought little relief. Media helicopters circled overhead as EOS descended onto the designated landing pad, their cameras capturing every moment for global audiences hungry for details. Reporters shouted questions through megaphones, their voices blending into an indistinct roar. Security personnel formed a tight perimeter, ushering the crew into waiting vehicles before the chaos could escalate further. Inside the debriefing facility, tension crackled in the air. Representatives from various agencies awaited them, their expressions ranging from eager curiosity to guarded skepticism. One by one, the crew recounted their experiences, presenting evidence meticulously cataloged during their time on PX-237. Artifacts, samples, and recordings painted a vivid picture of a civilization undone by its own ambition. Yet, conveying the sheer scale of what they'd witnessed proved challenging. Words fell short when describing the oppressive atmosphere, the unearthly whispers, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. Debate erupted almost immediately. Scientists argued over interpretations of the data, politicians debated the geopolitical ramifications, and ethicists questioned the morality of sharing or concealing such knowledge. Public opinion splintered along predictable lines. Some hailed the expedition as a triumph of human ingenuity, while others condemned it as reckless endangerment. Conspiracy theories proliferated online, fueled by snippets of leaked footage and speculative headlines. Amidst the turmoil, the crew struggled to adapt to their new reality. They were no longer explorers returning from a distant world. They were symbols, pawns in a game far larger than themselves. Interviews, lectures, and press conferences consumed their days, leaving little time for reflection or recovery. Each appearance chipped away at their mental fortitude, forcing them to relive their ordeal repeatedly. The line between public figure and private individual blurred until it nearly disappeared. Despite the scrutiny, cracks began to form within the team. Disagreements over how much to share and with whom strained relationships forged under extreme conditions. Trust eroded, replaced by suspicion and doubt. Had they done enough to prevent future disasters? Or had their actions inadvertently invited catastrophe closer to home? These questions festered, poisoning bonds once thought unbreakable. Months passed, and the initial frenzy surrounding PX-237 subsided into a simmering undercurrent of unease. Official reports sanitized the most unsettling aspects of the mission, presenting a narrative focused on scientific discovery rather than existential dread. Governments established task forces to study the artifacts, ostensibly to safeguard humanity against similar threats. Behind closed doors, however, discussions took a darker turn. Military applications of the technology hinted at possibilities both tantalizing and terrifying. For the crew, life became a series of contradictions. On one hand, they were celebrated as heroes, their faces plastered across magazines and billboards worldwide. On the other, they lived in constant fear of what they'd unleashed or failed to contain. Nightmares persisted, growing more vivid and frequent. Whispers echoed in empty rooms, shadows moved where none should exist, and instruments occasionally registered anomalous readings despite rigorous testing. Whether these phenomena stemmed from residual effects of PX-237 or their own fraying psyches remained unclear. Efforts to analyze the artifacts yielded mixed results. While some breakthroughs emerged, advancements in energy storage, materials science, and quantum computing, others raised troubling questions. The crystalline structures, for instance, exhibited properties inconsistent with known physics, suggesting interactions with dimensions beyond human comprehension. Attempts to replicate their functionality ended disastrously, resulting in equipment failures and inexplicable accidents. Researchers began referring to them in hushed tones, dubbing them the catalysts. Meanwhile, public interest waned, overshadowed by newer scandals and crises. Humanity's attention span proved fleeting, moving on to the next big story without fully processing the implications of PX 237. For those who remained vigilant, however, warning signs persisted. Reports trickled in from remote locations around the globe: strange lights in the sky, unexplained disappearances, and sudden bursts of electromagnetic interference. Correlations between these incidents and the artifact's energy signatures couldn't be ignored, though official responses downplayed any connection. As paranoia spread among the crew, fractures widened. Former allies turned against each other, accusing one another of negligence or worse. Some advocated for destroying the artifacts entirely, believing containment impossible. Others insisted on continued study, arguing that abandoning the research meant squandering a chance to protect humanity. Caught between guilt and duty, they found themselves unable to reconcile their differences. Tensions reached a breaking point when an incident occurred during a high-profile demonstration of the artifact's capabilities. A prototype device designed to harness the crystal's energy malfunctioned spectacularly, releasing a surge of unknown radiation. Witnesses reported seeing flashes of movement in the lab, shadowy figures darting just out of sight, before blacking out entirely. When consciousness returned, several researchers were missing, their bodies never recovered. Surveillance footage captured only static, rendering the event a chilling mystery. The fallout was immediate and severe. Funding for related projects dried up overnight, laboratories were shut down, and investigations launched into potential breaches of protocol. Speculation ran rampant, ranging from sabotage to extraterrestrial intervention. Amidst the chaos, whispers of the Watchers resurfaced, reigniting fears that the entities hadn't been banished after all. Instead, they may have infiltrated Earth itself, lying dormant until conditions allowed them to strike again. For the crew, the incident served as a grim reminder of their failure, or perhaps their success. Had disabling the system on PX-237 merely delayed the inevitable? Or had activating the blue artifact opened a door better left closed? Without definitive answers, paranoia consumed them. Trust dissolved entirely, leaving behind fractured individuals united only by shared trauma. Communication broke down, isolating them further. Each member retreated into solitude, grappling with guilt, regret, and the haunting possibility that they had doomed humanity. Attempts to warn authorities fell on deaf ears. Politicians dismissed their concerns as hysteria, citing lack of evidence and prioritizing stability over speculation. Meanwhile, covert operations quietly continued, driven by factions unwilling to abandon the potential power offered by the artifacts. Rumors circulated of secret facilities conducting experiments far removed from ethical oversight. Whether these efforts aimed to protect or exploit remained unknown, but either way, the stakes had never been higher. Desperation drove the crew to take drastic measures. Banding together for the first time in months, they resolved to destroy the remaining artifacts themselves. It was a risky plan, fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they saw no alternative. If humanity refused to acknowledge the threat, then it fell to them to act. Gathering intelligence on the locations of stored relics, they devised a strategy to infiltrate secure facilities and neutralize the objects permanently. What followed was a harrowing sequence of covert operations. Breaking into government compounds, bypassing state-of-the-art security systems, and navigating labyrinthine underground labs tested their skills to the limit. Along the way, they encountered resistance, not just from guards and automated defenses, but from anomalies reminiscent of PX-237. Shadows shifted unnaturally, whispers echoed in empty corridors, and instruments malfunctioned unpredictably. Each step forward felt like walking through quicksand, every movement resisted by unseen forces. When they finally reached the artifacts, destruction proved more difficult than anticipated. Attempts to shatter the crystals triggered violent reactions, energy surges, spatial distortions, even brief glimpses of amorphous shapes materializing briefly before vanishing. Lives were lost in the process, adding to the mounting toll of their mission. Yet, they pressed on, driven by a mix of determination and despair. By the time the last artifact was neutralized, only a handful of the original crew remained alive, and even fewer sane. Exhaustion overwhelmed them as they regrouped in a safe house, battered and broken. Success brought no satisfaction, only a hollow emptiness. Had they saved humanity or merely postponed its reckoning? Without the artifacts to study, answers remained elusive. All they could do was wait, watch, and hope that their sacrifices hadn't been in vain. Years passed, and the world moved on. Memories of PX 237 faded into legend, relegated to conspiracy forums and late-night documentaries. The surviving members of the crew slipped into obscurity, their names forgotten except by those who still believed in their warnings. Some sought solace in isolation, retreating to remote corners of the globe. Others dedicated their lives to monitoring for signs of the Watcher's return, scanning skies and frequencies for any hint of unnatural activity. Then, one night, it happened. Across the planet, instruments recorded a spike in electromagnetic activity unlike anything seen before. Lights flickered, communication networks collapsed, and strange phenomena erupted simultaneously in multiple locations. Witnesses reported seeing towering figures cloaked in darkness, their forms shifting and writhing like smoke given life. Eyes glowed where none should exist, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Panic spread like wildfire, engulfing cities in chaos. In the midst of the crisis, the surviving crew reunited for the final time. Armed with knowledge gained from their ordeal, they worked tirelessly to devise a solution. Using fragments salvaged from the destroyed artifacts, they constructed a device capable of emitting a frequency theorized to repel the Watchers. It was a desperate gamble, but it represented their last hope. Activating the device required immense sacrifice. Power sources drained rapidly, forcing them to improvise with whatever resources remained. As the machine hummed to life, the Watchers converged, drawn by the surge of energy. For a moment, all seemed lost. Then, abruptly, the entities recoiled, retreating into the void from whence they came. Silence fell, profound and absolute. When dawn broke, the world stood intact, but forever changed. Humanity now knew the universe held terrors beyond comprehension, forces that defied logic and reason. The crew's legacy endured not as heroes or villains, but as guardians who had stared into the abyss and survived. Their story served as both a warning and a testament to resilience in the face of unimaginable odds. And so, the mystery remains unsolved for now. Will humanity heed the warnings carved into the stones of PX 237? Or will history repeat itself, dooming us to the same fate as the vanished civilization? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. The universe holds secrets beyond our wildest imaginations. If you crave more stories like this, if you want to explore the edges of science fiction and horror, then hit that subscribe button, because the next adventure is just around the corner.